Hey dear practitioners, and welcome to another episode of the Lebenspraxis podcast. This episode is more geared towards people that have already listened to a few of my things or seen some videos, so I won't bother you with a long intro. What I will do in this episode is I will answer some questions, and later in this episode I will discuss some feedback or criticism that I got about my editing in some recent videos, and I will contemplate little bit about that. So that will be interesting for everyone, I think. I got two questions about nutrition, which are very similar. So one guy asked me about how's my nutrition, and then another practitioner asked me about nutrition for health, longevity, energy, and performance. Nutrition is quite an complex topic, so I won't go too much into it now. That might be great for another episode, but let's look at some basics. Actually, let's look at the three important things that you need to understand. If you look through all the nutrition advice that you heard in your life, that you saw, that you read, what are common things there? What is repeated over and over again? So that's number one. I look for similarities. So what is clear for us? What good nutrition is? What is just clear? And note, I don't care if there's an echo chamber in one community where they all say the same, but I care about that people from different strains of thoughts are agreeing on something. Now, maybe you know someone that is a vegan and says, this is the best nutrition out there. Like, since I'm a vegan, I feel so much better. Maybe you have a very broad range of friends or acquaintances, and you also know someone that is a carnivore that only eats meat. And this person says, since I'm only eating meat, I'm feeling so much better. How is it possible that two people eat so different and both say they feel so good and the best they ever felt in their life? One thing we always have to take into account is, how did people eat before? So if someone makes a diet change, but the diet change is actually from eating very bad, like eating a lot of processed food, a lot of chemical rich foods, like man-made chemicals, then in a sense it doesn't matter which diet you are, but it will improve how you feel. So did people already eat what is supposed to be healthy before and then change something and that improved how they felt? Or did they come from a crap diet and then, okay, now they eat vegan, or now they eat paleo or yoga style? I don't know. It's easy to feel better on a diet if your diet before was very bad. But there's another thing here, which is the genetic differences of the people. And this is where dieting becomes so complex, where nutrition becomes so complex. We are not all the same. We are actually differing quite a bit in what happens with the food that we take in. So your personal individual goal with nutrition is always to figure out what is the best nutrition for you. And notice there can be cultural and social aspects about this as well. So I give you some examples about me. I'm careful with dairy products. I don't eat too many milk products. Although I really like them, I notice that my tonsils react to them. Another thing I'm careful about is histamine. If I eat a histamine-rich diet, then I develop an achy throat, or I have less energy, or also a headache. And I personally don't need to eat a super low histamine diet, but I wouldn't feel so great if I eat a lot of Parma cheese plus salami. Unfortunately, I also react in the same way to high percentage chocolate, which was really a big love that I had. High percentage chocolate, like 90%, 95%, 100%. But at some point I realized that when I eat this chocolate, I develop a headache. And this just developed at some point in my life. So something changed. And I can eat a piece of like 85% here and there, especially if I didn't eat that for a longer time. But generally speaking, that's out of my diet, which I'm sometimes a bit sad about, but yeah, that's it. There are also some more specific foods where I feel it's not really my thing, like I don't like how I feel after eating them. For example, I don't like to eat broccoli too often. Maybe that's like the 4-year-old inside of me. But what I'm doing is observing very carefully how do I feel after I ate something, in order to really do my own personal diet, and also acknowledging that this is not a thing you do for a certain time and then you stop to feel, to perceive, but my digestion is changing through time, my body's changing through time, myself is changing through time, so my nutrition is also changing through time. So that's why it's always a little bit ridiculous if people talk about this is the best diet or that is the best diet, blah, blah, blah. This is like a children thing, and I've talked about this a few times already. I have a video about that called Your Diet and Being a Grown-Up. It's like movement training. What is the best movements to do, or like martial arts, what is the best martial arts? The best nutrition is personalized, individualized nutrition. But there's a third thing here about nutrition that is not so much just biological, but actually what makes it hard for people to stick to a healthy nutrition is very often it is things that go beyond that nutrition. It's not just how does it taste what I eat and so on. Like, I want my candy and blah, blah, blah. But why do you want the candy? That's the question. And the answer here is that nutrition is not just eating things for the macro and micronutrients so your organs function well, but all of this is connected to something beyond that, which is your whole self, you could say. But also, let's refer back to the biopsychosocial model. So it will be hard for you to stick to a vegan diet if you are in the Arctic hunting with the Inuit and there's actually no plants. And in other places, it will be difficult to stick to a diet which is very meat-based. But if we are in a scenario where you have abundance of food and you can choose, what supports you in making good choices is that you feel at peace, and that you feel you don't need to compensate something through your diet. That means you have a low stress level. So if you're not stressed, it will be much easier to have a healthy diet. So do you actually live a life that allows you to eat a healthy diet? And don't take it as an excuse, obviously, but if you want to eat more healthy, don't just look at the diet, but look also at everything around it. Because actually, the problem that most people have is not that they don't know how to eat well. Obviously, the details many people don't know. But I mean, we understand that eating at McDonald's is not healthy, or Coca-Cola, like this stuff. This principle is very simple. Everything that comes from the USA, you don't eat. But if you live in Europe, you just stick with what's growing on European farms. And of course, you can add your bananas and stuff. Yeah, but unprocessed foods, that's clear for people. And then these how much meat, which vegetables, and blah, 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 blah. Now we already go into the more individual layer. But have you actually mastered this first layer? That's the question. And if not, like, okay, first figure that out, how to eat well in general without the special details. Last thing that I add to the nutrition topic before we move on is if you can stop to eat, is like the Siddhartha thing, no? I can wait, I can think, I can fast. If you can do these three, you covered the base of good nutrition. Guys, if you want, in a later episode, we can talk about the practicalities of how to keep a good nutrition alive. Just tell me if you're interested in that. Let's jump to a very different topic, because I got the question about the Han solopreneur, this joking term I came up with. So there's the solopreneur and then there's the Han solopreneur who is working with one Chewbacca. And the question is if I work according to the weekdays. So if I take Sundays off. And no, very often I cannot take Sundays off because I teach a workshop. So my work is happening very regularly when other people have their free time. But I try to keep enough weekends empty for my family. So my juggle is always to try to have enough time with my children and with Annika, and to be there for other family members and friends. And for me, that can often mean I either already start pretty early in the morning, or I do another work session when the kids are asleep in the evening. So although I think it makes a lot of sense to work according to the weekdays, and I think the Sunday should be a holy day, a day of rest, in my life, there are things that are more important than that. So regularly, I don't do on Sunday what God did on the seventh day, but I work. But on the other hand, that can mean that I have my Sunday on a different day of the week. Regularly, I get asked about my current goals. And yesterday I had a phone call with a colleague also, and he asked me, what is it what I'm currently working on? And I told him I'm working on solving the problem. And what is the problem? The problem is that I think we as human beings could be better in working together. And there is a problem with cynicism, there's a problem with darkness, and there's a problem with people feeling they fell out of an airplane and there's nothing that they can grab to steer the path. They're just falling. And this is what often creates this cynicism that I see people having in their actions. And one big question for me is, how can we reconnect to something that is beyond ourselves or higher than ourselves? Because there's lots of fighting and conflicts. But can we rest deeply on our inner couch and cooperate with each other in this beautiful world? That's obviously not just my current goal, but this is my thing that I'm thinking about every day. Every day in the evening, when it became quiet, I have this question with me when I go to bed. Another question that comes regularly up, and that someone wrote recently as a comment to a video of mine, is what are standards for different movement topics? So the question in particular was, I'd be curious to hear more about standards for things like strength, walking, mobility. How much is needed? What would you say is a good minimum for most people? And I think, first of all, there's two things here about this question. The one thing is that I'm always a little bit hesitant to answer it because I think it's a bit tricky to work with standards. And on the other hand, I understand that it's very, very helpful for the human mind to think about standards and to think, okay, I will aim to reach this, and this, and this, and then I'm going to maintain it, and then I can shift my focus somewhere else. I think that makes sense. On the other hand, obviously, we are all individuals again and blah, 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 blah. And the big question is standards, like for what do you need that? So maybe the quick answer would be, so you're able to do what you want to do, or what is your path, what is important for you to do. So let's say we talk about health. And then for walking, I usually say something like, you should walk at least 35 kilometers a week. I think that's good to have in mind. If you walk less, will that be the end of the world? No. If you walk more, that will be very great. But I think if you look at your phone and it tells you in the end of the week, you only walked 15 kilometers, then it's maybe good to get out for half a day and do some long walk. For mobility, I think it's good if you can do a squat. It's good if you can reach your arms overhead well. It's good if you can touch the ground. These are some specific positions and movements. But overall, what is important in mobility, that you can do the things that you want to do in your daily life. Unfortunately, for many people, that doesn't mean that they move a lot. So we need to have longevity on our radar, because if you don't move a lot now, or if you don't move enough now, later you will most likely run into quite some problems. So in that sense, the question is, can you get to the floor and come back up nicely? If you see yoga positions, is that something where you feel it's impossible for you, or you feel like, yes, okay, that's all right? Do you have pains when you go in certain ranges of motion without much load on your body, or is everything well possible in your normal full range? So in that sense, you could say the standard would be to use full range of motion in your joints in natural movements that are just normal to do. So we're not talking about the splits or something like that, but the movements that you do when you walk and climb and work in the garden and maybe wrestle with someone. Can you do these things, or are you impaired doing the normal stuff? What used to be normal, not what is normal today, because what is normal today is not normal. That is way below normal, what is normal today. And strength is a similar question. Like, can you do normal things, like a push-up? That's a normal thing to stand up from the floor, or to pull yourself up. Like, can you do a chin-up? Can you do some push-ups? Can you do squats? And for me, if you're below a certain age, I would say something like a pistol squat is normal, like to be able to stand up on one leg, because that's like a step up on top of something that is higher, and for some reason you can't use your arms. I mean, that's normal things. Can you do this normal things? Like, I would say it's normal to be able to climb something like FB5 in the boulder, and I would say it's normal because my son is climbing at 6-year-old the beginner routes in the gym. So if a 6-year-old can do the beginner routes, or a 6-year-old can climb the rope, then I think a grown-up that has usually normally much more muscle mass should be able to do those things, but actually a little bit better, because my son, he cannot do a chin up, but he can do this stuff. So yeah, I think that's normal. I do a big jump again. The last worth value item you bought was the question. And actually, I will not answer with something that I bought, but I will answer with something that I rented, which is another computer. I rented another computer because I ran into quite a bit of trouble that my computer was occupied a lot of the time during the day processing these videos that I make, because these have to be decoded and rendered and cut and so on, and then uploaded, and that's quite a bit of work for a computer. So I rented another computer. I didn't want to buy one. I just rented one for 1 year. So in 1 year I will give it back and maybe rent a newer version, and that is reducing my workflow cuts. So that's definitely worth for me the money to have 2 computers here, because this content creation already takes quite a bit of time, and it's good if it doesn't take more time than needed. And for that reason, I would like to reduce the technological reasons it takes a lot of time. So the processing power of a computer. There are like 3 categories of things that I buy: is things for my work, things for my practice or experiencing the world, and things for my family. But most of the things that I buy is directly for my work. Here or there I buy some outdoor stuff or material or a tool to craft something. But actually for my personal life, I think I have everything that I need. I have clothes, I have shoes, I have access and knives and a tent and a sleeping bag, so that's good. Let's go back to the topic of movement, because one question that I got was about this video that I made about the 3 steps for more movement, to start your movement journey, which is about strong walking and strength. And then one question that I liked was, I know you've started a discussion around number 4. So in the video I talk about what would be a possible number 4. But I'd be interested in you addressing in a future video why anyone needs to go beyond these simple recommendations in a movement practice. And the thing is that there is missing pieces here. And I will talk about the missing pieces in a webinar soon. But I want to add one thing here that many people are actually pretty aware of, which is endurance or cardiovascular training. And the base of this is done by walking. Especially if you're in a hilly area, you can achieve a lot just by walking. But if you're more in a flat area, then it's good to do some stuff that is a bit more intense. And there can be biking, there can be swimming, that can be, like the triathlon stuff. But I have also tested how to do endurance training from the perspective of the movement approach. So that would be with different things like wrestling, or with parkour, or with ground movements like crawling stuff, or with exuberant arm swing stuff, or different jumping things. So I played quite a bit of this, monitoring my heart rate, collecting data also of other people, because I felt the problem with endurance, especially if you talk about zone 2 endurance. So I will not get more into it for now because I don't want to keep that too long, but I will probably address that soon about zone 2 training from the movement approach. And I think zone 2 training is something very, very interesting, but the problem is it takes a long time. And if you spend several hours each week doing things like stationary bike inside or running on treadmill, I think this time could be used better, because people anyway don't have much time for training. So I generally would say, if you have little time for training, I don't want to waste it for just doing endurance, like only endurance, but I want to include some other things as well, like coordination or sensory work. Yeah, like running outside in the forest has a lot of sensory input. But to sum it up, I think from this first 3 that I start with, there's more steps that are missing in the first 3, and one is endurance. All right, coming to the last part of this episode, because I got a few varying opinions on some videos that I made that were, I think I can say it like this, a bit over edited, which is because people are used from my side that the videos have a very calm style, which I like. But I have experimented recently with doing more editing on Instagram, but also on YouTube. And the old school guys, they don't like it so much. Other people told me they really like it. So the opinions vary, but the discussion that happens is what is happening if Josef is now doing a TikTok style. So what would happen? Would there be a problem? And I think we need to contemplate what is actually the goal, because there is a lot of talk about, people like to mention dopamine and dopamine. Everyone is saying dopamine, yeah. But people talk a lot about attention span, and all this stuff. Okay, attention span, TikTok is very short. I'm actually, like, after thinking about this for a time and looking a little bit into this stuff, I'm unsure if the problem is as worse as it is on the one hand, and on the other hand, I am also very much concerned. So I think there is a huge problem, but I think the language that is sometimes used is quite violent and brutal. And I think what is still true, for example, is that, people watch this super short TikTok stuff and directly swipe and swipe and swipe. But on the other hand, people are watching also very long movies still. Like, people are watching 3-hour movies. People are going into Oppenheimer. Yeah. How many people went into Oppenheimer, into Barbie, like into these movies that are long? But for sure, there are people that cannot deal with that are detrained to do that, but you can always train yourself again. And for years, I'm talking about training yourself to do long things. I'm really believing that, to do long things. And this is what I do. I'm very trained to do long things. But another question arises. I think what I'm doing has a lot of worth. This is really changing the lives of many people. So what I'm looking at is, how can I spread the message? And that's why I'm experimenting. I'm experimenting with videos that are more edited, with videos that are calmer. And then I want to see what happens, like what people are attracted, how many people are attracted to that. Because in the end, once people are really getting into my stuff and then also start to train with me, they will experience the length. They will experience the long game. They will experience doing things for a long time. They will experience peacefulness, calmness. And the question is, can you already start with that approach, or do you need to do it a little bit in a way that people that are not there yet, they're not yet at this length, at this depth, is it a good idea to get them through stuff that is made in a way that they can consume at the moment? It's a tricky path and there's no clear answer, and that's why I'm experimenting with different ways of presenting my ideas, although my main way is and will always stay a calm way and a deep way. On the other hand, it was also very, very interesting for me lately to edit these videos, to make these videos, and I haven't published all of these videos from the TikTok series, let's say. I think it definitely made me a better video editor, better amateur video editor, of course, because everything you've seen lately in the last months has been editing by myself completely, like without any help. Now I get some help again, but for a few months I wanted to do everything by myself, because that helped me also a lot to figure out how do I want the videos to be and what is actually important for a good video and so on. Like we talked about the solopreneur in the solopreneur episode, that it's so good to have your own experience, and I'm cutting videos for a long time, but in the last years I think I improved my skill, and I'm still improving with every video. So for the old school guys, just relax, if there's a video that you see, there's a different style, a bit different from what I'm usually used from Joseph, just accept it and realize, hey, I didn't make necessarily this the way I edited for you, but for other people that like that sort of videos, to also show them my work. And I think that's a valid way, because the intention is clear, to get people to the real world and the practice. But I have to say thank you very much for the feedback, because it's very important for me. And it was so nice to hear from so many people how they love the calm style, because I like it so much as well. And that really encouraged me to keep that up. So you will see, sometimes there will be more TikTok style videos, because I like to play also. But in the end, I prefer people to listen or watch my podcast, because there's more time to explain ideas here. All right, everyone. If you want me to elaborate on any topic that I talked about in this episode, let me know. You can write me an email, or it's very nice if you write a comment on YouTube, because comments always show other people that this is a legit stuff. It's worth to listen to it, because it's actually you as the audience who decides that. It's not me. I produce, I try my best, and then it's up to you if that's worth spreading. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, I want to remind you about that, because it's also a very calm environment. It's an environment where I can really craft a nice text for you, and I know that many people really enjoy reading this newsletter. All right, if you have any questions, let me know so I can address that in the podcast. And as always, continue.